Yeah, thank you very much, Chrissy, and for the introduction, and thanks to Jackson and the team for putting together the conference this week. What a great 24 hours. Yesterday, gold punched through $4,000 Aussie an ounce, and Shy Bolton's coming to Freo. So it's been a good 24 hours. But all of us who invest and follow football know that there's a concept called risk and reward. How much is it you're willing to put on the table to test an idea and test a concept versus what can you expect to get out of that investment? Very true for exploration, very true for footballers as well. So today I'd like to talk to you a bit about what the risk-reward story is for explorers. We run our exploration programs very similarly. We look at opportunities to invest our shareholders' money for what can we get out of the ground, what information can we learn, what piece of the puzzle can we learn and vector ourselves into that discovery. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what Hamelin's doing to decrease our technical risk, and I'm talking about technical risk today, and what sort of prize do we think is available to us up in the Tanami. So, Hamelin Gold is a West Australian-focused and gold-focused exploration company. Our main marquee project, as mentioned, is up in the far northeast of Western Australia in the Tanami province. More recently, we've acquired a series of projects in the southern half of WA, and I'll talk about one of those specifically later on in the presentation. Our board is pretty experienced and pretty well balanced. We have a good mixture between both commercial and technical background. And something different for a junior, we have two major multi-billion-dollar gold producers on our register, both at 15%. One being Goldfields, and the other being Vault Minerals, which you probably may not have heard of, but that's the company that's newly minted and through the amalgamation of Silver Lake Resources and Red 5. We've got a pretty tight capital structure, good cash position, and our shareholders are really leveraged to exploration success. But to introduce our location in the Tanami, here we are sitting right on the Northern Territory West Australian border. Our project covers over 2,000 square kilometres and goes over 100 strike kilometres of the main Tanami Gold Province. We are 100 kilometres to the west of the giant Kali Gold System, and the same structures that host that ore system project through our ground to the west. Now, the big guys in the room are definitely Newmont. Newmont, this is a 20 million ounce gold system. It's truly a world-class giant. And that's one of the reasons why, and something that Mark mentioned yesterday, the thing about this field is it's got its giant, but it doesn't have its tail of other 2 to 5 million ounce gold systems that you would expect to see in a similar type environment, like around Kalgoorlie. And then again, probably a long tail of million ounce systems. And that gap is the opportunity and the prize that we think is available up in the Tanami district. It's the same geology, same structures. And that sort of concept was really validated earlier this year when Newmont announced the upgrading of the Oberon resource to a 2.7 million ounce system, and it's one that's still growing. It's the sort of prize, the type of reward that we think we can achieve if successful in the Tanami. Importantly, I'll talk about a couple of the key things that Newmont have let out in their most recent announcement about Oberon that's really putting into context some of the results that we're achieving on the West Australian side of the border. The other big guys in the room, Northern Star and their joint venture with Tanami Gold, and also our most recent addition to the region, Goldfields, one of our major shareholders and now our neighbour, who've entered the region through a joint venture with Kili Resources. In between us and Newmont sits where the Prodigy ground sits. So the Tanami is going through a bit of a resurgence, and Mark mentioned this yesterday. It's really something that not many people talk about. Newmont just stuck $1.7 billion into the expansion of their Tanami operations. They're going to go to about 650,000 ounces per annum, and they've got production going out for the next 20 years. This is a monster gold system, and it's already their lowest cost gold production anywhere in the world for the world's largest gold mining company. So it's a bolter. But Oberon is what I'm going to focus on today. So Oberon sits under sand cover, some 30 kilometres north of Kali. It is a system that was identified quite some time ago through very shallow sampling and shallow drilling. And what they identified, and some of the key points I want you to remember, is this is a very low-level anomaly. A single 0.2 ppb is basically background. Shallow drilling did identify some further gold anomalism, but what was really important is the drilling did identify a large hydrothermal footprint. And that really said to probably the geos over time that this actual system was maybe bigger than what the anomaly they were seeing near surface in gold. And that footprint is sort of anomalous in a number of elements, including things like arsenic, the system there. But also what we're seeing in the Tanami is a lot of the deposits, and this is true for a lot of orogenic gold deposits, so it's not unique to the Tanami, but they occur in really quite structurally complex, and up here, tightly folded doleritic sequences are one of the key host rocks in the region. So as we go forward in the presentation, just keep in mind, very subtle gold at surface, large hydrothermal footprints, complex folded geology. So this is what the Tanami looks like. If you want to travel down the road, it's been bitumised, as I mentioned, but this is not holiday destination 101. This is a blank sheet of paper, geological paper, covered in sand. Now, you have to be smart up here. We could start on the east side of our tenements, go for 100 kilometres drilling holes on a regular pattern. We'd go broke before we sort of got it more than a couple of kilometres down the road. The drillers would love it, but we would probably not find a great deal unless we're very lucky. But we have to be smart. We have to vector in, go from our large land holdings down to these really discrete deposit scale targets as quickly, efficiently and as cheaply as we can. And one of the technologies we've been focused on is the application of the CSIRO developed ultra-fine fraction soil geochemistry. Now, I could spend probably a fair bit of time talking about how it works, but what I'll do is just show you the results and you can make up your own mind as to what the benefit of this technology is. So here's an area up on our Sultan Gold Corridor. It's about a 1 kilometre long anomaly that we identified in the ultrafine data. It's quite a nice anomaly, but at the same time as doing the ultrafines, we did some conventional soil geochemistry to try and see what the old guys would have picked up if they'd done the traditional geochem through this area. So a couple of lines of data are orientation lines, and those lines, and this is an area we have drilled subsequently and found gold at depth, so we know that ultrafines work. There is a subtle blip there in the traditional geochem. Now, I'd argue if you'd sampled this a little bit broader, you might have missed it. And really, some of this stuff kind of does look like background. But when you come here with the ultrafine data, you get a really cool response. You get a significant uplift in the gold response. But interestingly, we didn't see the background numbers go up a great deal, if at all. So what it does is it really drags the trees out from the woods. And it really brings us in and focuses us in on the most important parts of the system quickly. And this is important. But the other cool thing about ultrafines is we're getting 53 elements along with the gold, and each of those elements tells a bit of a story. And I'll give you a bit of a case study. So this is our entire land package on magnetics. I don't know if you can, yep, you can sort of see there. There's 10 boxes that we just recently committed and completed sampling on. Those results, we released some of those early results just on Monday this week. And I'd like to focus on one of those areas that really stood out very much to us very early on up in the northwest. That black dotted outline is where we talked about just then about the orientation lines we completed on Sultan, and the white area is the area that we just sampled and released earlier this week. And a new prospect which we've generated called the Jazz prospect, sitting just to the west. And zooming in on that, this is a magnetic background, so and the location of the Sultan anomaly is sitting there in a yellow outline. So the area we sampled is to the west of that. Interestingly, the geology that we're targeting, the dolerites, have a unique geochemical signature. They're a unique type of rock. The fact that we're seeing that signature through the sand is remarkable to me, with the fact that we can map geology using surface geochemistry in areas of undercover through thick sand is pretty remarkable. Now that geology map also shows us some pretty unique features. We thought the geology has continued west and headed off. What we're seeing now is we're actually linking two major doleritic units, the northern Afghan trend and the Sultan trend, through an area of intense structural complexity. Kind of cool. When we loaded up the gold numbers, we generated 3 quite coherent anomalies sitting directly over the top of that host unit. Nice place for it to be. We also saw strong bismuth association with that, which is the sort of pathfinder we see for mineralisation in this part of the world. But what was fascinating was when we started overlaying some of the alteration anomalies that we see on the east side of the Tanami over this area. And this identified quite an important, and something we hadn't noticed before, an important cross-cutting north-south structure. When we go through a bit of interpretation, what we've got now is two known gold corridors going into an area of structural complexity. We're seeing cross-cutting structures, we're seeing gold anomalism, quite low level, and we're seeing a large hydrothermal footprint. Kind of sounds familiar, and it's why we're really excited about what this project looks like. We got these results about 10 days to 2 weeks ago, modelled them up, organised a rig, and we're drilling there right now. So we started drilling on Sunday. We're going to see that drill program go through to the end of the month, and we should see results from that program, the early drilling, before the end of the quarter. So we're going from a very large area. This anomaly we've generated is about 3 kilometres by a kilometre, so it's a big system. We've gone from concept, sampling, to drilling, testing for bedrock mineralisation, all in a very short period of time. So this is one of 10 areas we tested. It is the best looking, I'll give you that, but we're now going through the other data to see what other targets we can generate and look at early next year. So some really interesting, hopefully, numbers coming out from that in the next few months. So keep an eye out for that. But this technology is something that we think we've got a real competitive advantage in understanding how to use it. So we've looked at other areas of the state and traditional areas of gold mineralisation, the eastern goldfields, looking at areas where maybe traditional exploration may have stepped over some pretty cool geology. And we've identified 5 project areas. We've picked up tenements on vacant ground, and one of those I'll talk about is our Anderson project, which sits right on the edge of the wheat belt, just north of Hyden. So this is an area about 20 k's by 15 k's, the tenement we picked up. It is an area where one of the speakers for later on today tells me he was out there a couple of decades ago digging holes in the sand, chasing calcrete, looking for calcrete anomalies. Now they did generate a pretty cool anomaly in the wheat belt area. They went back and did some shallow air core drilling and actually confirmed bedrock gold in some of those very shallow holes. And in fact, a lot of them finished in mineralisation, which is kind of interesting in the first place. But our ultrafine data, which is far closer spaced and more detailed, really generated an absolute cracking anomaly. It's about 8 kilometres by 2. We got individual samples there up to almost 0.2 grams per tonne gold in sand sitting on the surface. And this is pretty remarkable. It's the highest numbers we've generated across our work in WA. So again, a big system. What we need to do next is get in the paddocks once the crops are off, get some more detailed geochemistry. And this is another example how we can go from a very large area down to a really discrete drill target quickly and cheaply. That survey took 2 people, 2 days. So it cost us about $8,000. This is not going to burn the bank testing some of these concepts. So really exciting technology, applying it in a number of different locations and coming up with some really cool results. So we've got a busy 6 months ahead. We've got, as mentioned, we released the ultrafine data this week, drilling, spinning rods. The boys are up there smashing out a program which will finish in the next few weeks. We're then down south in the wheat belt and the Yilgarn following up some of those new projects. And before long, we'll be back in the Tanami doing heritage and completing our planned drill programs for 2025. So it's an exciting time at the moment in Hamelin, lots going on. So interesting new technologies and some smart geology going on, so really exciting times. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about what we're doing, how we're doing it, what's going on, feel free to catch us at the booth. And if you'd like to follow us, put us on your watch list, keep an eye on what's going on for gold. So it's a great time to be in gold and not a bad time to be in Hamelin. So thanks very much.